Hi again and welcome to another one of my cult movie reviews. Now for this video we're going to be taking a look at another often overlooked gem. This time it's the turn of the cult 1980s shocker where the dead never rest in peace, Mortuary. The film starts with a couple of lads, Greg and Josh, who are breaking into an old warehouse. Whilst inside, they catch sight of the owner of the local funeral parlour, Hank Andrews, as played by cult B-movie actor Christopher George, engaging in what looks like some sort of bizarre occult ritual with some other folk down in the basement. Greg decides to stay and watch whilst Josh goes to rip off some stuff, only to come to a sticky end as he runs into someone dressed as one of the occult members brandishing an embalming lance. Realising that Josh and the van are now missing, Greg fears the worst. Suspecting one of Andrew's occult members, he goes to the police, but with nothing to connect him to the disappearance and Andrews denying everything, they are powerless to act. In the meantime, Greg's girlfriend Christy, played by former Waltons actress Mary McDonnough, finds that she's being stalked at night by the same strange figure that we saw killing Josh earlier on. But as she's prone to bouts of sleepwalking, her mother doesn't believe her and thinks that it's just part of the nightmares that she's been having since the recent death of her father. But when Greg reveals that her mother was one of the people that he saw with Andrews in the basement of the warehouse, they begin to realise that there's more to him in the funeral parlour than meets the eye. They also suspect that either him or whoever it was that's stalking Christy might have something to do with the recent death of her father, so they decide to try and find out what's really going on at the funeral home. Owing more than just a passing nod to the likes of Halloween and various other period slashers of the day, the movie is not overly bloody. There's a few good gory kill scenes, but these are few and far between, and is perhaps more of a murder mystery than a slasher movie. The film has been criticised for being a bit slow, but I found it to be sufficiently entertaining. There are numerous plot twists and red herrings to keep things interesting, such as the true identity of who the killer is, Christie's sleepwalking antics, Mr. Andrews' involvement with the occult group, and the introduction of his socially inept son Paul, played by a very young looking Bill Paxton here in what was obviously one of his earliest screen roles. Yeah, I bet he leaves this one off his resume nowadays. Now the film was apparently made back in 1981, but wasn't released commercially until 1983, and so technically became Christopher George's final film, as he sadly died a few months after its release. This also meant that it was the last film in which he starred alongside his wife Lynda-Day George, who played Christie's mother in this, as they'd appeared together in numerous films and TV shows over the years, most notably the film Pieces and Day of the Animals. Now despite being a slasher film, it seemed that the distributors clearly had some sort of a problem marketing this, so they decided to try and sell it as a zombie movie instead, which it obviously wasn't, and thus produced one of the most interesting and misleading ad campaigns ever seen. For its US theatrical trailer, the distributors filmed a whole new bunch of unrelated scenes which weren't in the film, featuring horror veteran Michael Berryman, who didn't even star in it.
Before you are covered with the last shovelful of dirt, be sure you are really dead. Mortuary.
Similarly, the poster artwork, which was also used for the video release, gave the impression that this was some sort of Evil Dead type movie, which it obviously wasn't. Rumour had it that the reason for this was because interest in slasher movies had started to decline by the time they got round to releasing this, so they thought they could get more money by promoting it as a zombie film. Either way, I'd hate to be the one that was having to fend off all the angry cinema customers who felt they'd been duped. In the UK, the film was originally released onto video in a slightly cut form which shortened some of the death scenes. This was back in the early days though, before the Video Recordings Act came in, and as a result, this was one of the many video films that disappeared from shelves for not having an official BBFC video certificate when the new video distribution laws came into effect in 1984. A more heavily cut version of the film was later released onto video under the title Embalmed. But aside from that, the film has pretty much languished in obscurity on both sides of the Atlantic ever since its initial release. The good news is that the film has finally made its way onto DVD, in the United States at least anyway. It would probably pass uncut for a UK release if submitted for a classification today, but at the time of writing this has not happened yet. The film is definitely worth a watch in my view, even if only to see a young Bill Paxton and his oddball antics in this. Indeed, it's kind of hard to believe that he'd go on to star in James Cameron's Aliens just a few years later. Again, this is not a particularly bloody or action-packed film, but it is quite a nice little suspense thriller which benefits from a decent cast. So, if you get the chance, then I would definitely recommend you check this one out.
Have you decided yet? Or would you rather be cremated instead of buried?
And that will do.